is she's about you don't need to be a technical person and you don't need to learn how to code, right? So I think that's important, really important aspect when learning this, right? Because I think a lot of people make the assumption that, you need to be able to code, you need to have a strong technical knowledge in order to understand and be able to function in this space. Okay, so Nelly, I'm going to hand it over to you. And we're really looking forward to it. I know I am, because I've heard so much great things about our presentation that actually I'm really looking forward to it.
The pressure is on. Well, great to meet you all. I am so excited to be here. This is my first session of the day because it's morning in New York City, actually. So I'm happy to join you today. And as Ayami mentioned, I work a lot with non-technical founders, and my goal today is to teach you how to speed up your product development process and outpace your competitors with a fraction of the team. This is what's really unique about what I'm going to be teaching you. There's a workbook that comes along with it. I'm going to run through this because we have such a short time. So if you guys want to go download a workbook, just go to this URL and you'll be able to download the notes from this session. So feel free to do that. As I mentioned, my goal today is to show you how to actually increase the product velocity in your startup, and we'll define what that is. And the key that I think every startup struggles with, right, is that they have a very small team. They have few resources, and a lot of the strategies that I'm going to be teaching you will allow you to do that with a very small team. And just a quick introduction. I think, Ayami, you covered a lot of it. I'm a CTO, a fractional CTO. I work with a lot of early stage startups as a fractional CTO. I'm also a startup tech advisor, and I created Tech Speak for Entrepreneurs, which is an online program where I teach the most effective and efficient ways to manage tech teams and projects, even if you're not technical. And today we're going to cover some of that process as well. So the 10-step process that I teach. I've been doing this for over 18 years, and everything I'm going to be teaching you is from real world experience. I still manage teams. I have my own startup in the well-being space that I recently became a co-founder of. So I've been in the space for many, many years, and I'm going to share basically everything that I've learned the hard way, and hopefully you can take some of those ideas and implement them in your startup. I also taught this to thousands of entrepreneurs all across the world. The processes that I'm going to be teaching you are based on lean and agile methodologies. I'm sure a lot of people know the terminology, but I think there's a lot of people who have a hard time putting stuff into practice. So that's what the process is all about, is teaching you how to do that. So let's define what is product velocity. And by the way, if you have questions as I'm going to go through the presentation, write them down, because things will come up and you may not be able to ask the question, but I want you to write things down. And Ayami mentioned that you guys may feel shy about asking questions, but I love questions. I want to make sure that this is valuable for you. So what I'm presenting here may not be what you need right now. Okay, so I want to encourage you to take these ideas and try, as I'm presenting, and try to apply it to your current startup, your current situation. And I want to have a conversation at the end to be able to help you with actual problems, real issues that you may have. Does that sound good? All right. I'm gonna see. All right. So what is product velocity? Product velocity is the CEO's ability to align the entire startup team to focus on the right goals at the right time, so you can quickly and efficiently learn who is the exact target market that is willing to use your product on a regular basis and is also willing to pay you for it. Notice the definition here of product velocity is not just about building the product. It's about your entire team, your tech, your marketing, your sales, your business development, and so on, being able to work together and execute quickly and efficiently in an iterative way to actually build a business around the product that you're building, right? And to be able to build a business, you need to be able to find the customers that will pay for your product, right? This we call that product market fit. A lot of entrepreneurs, and this is an unfortunate thing that I see in a lot of early stage startups, people say, well, you'll figure out how to solve or find customers later, right? And this is the biggest misnomer or misconception in my mind for a lot of founders, to be able to find a valuable problem. Most startups fail not because the product couldn't be built, but because no one wanted it in the first place, right? And in order to build a business, you need to be able to find the market first that wants it, identify a high enough problem that you know people are going to be willing to pay you with time or money, and ideally both. And then you'll be able to solve those problems directly with a product, then you're in business, right? So that is my definition of product market fit. And what you want to be able to do on the market side is really focus on identifying the target customer segment. You start narrow and then you go out, right? Niching down in the beginning is going to help you to be able to do that with a smaller team, to find your early adopters and be able to iterate really quickly. And then, of course, validate the customer problems to make sure that they are not just high enough, right? But they are painkillers. These are 12 out of 10 problems, not level 5, 6, or 7 problems that most entrepreneurs solve. And when you want to be able to find, when you find customers that actually need your solution, it's going to be selling them the product is going to be super easy. Okay. So the goal on the market side is to be able to find those identify those early customers, and then you find a product, you build a product that directly solves those problems. So on the what you want to be able to do, and this is what I think a lot of entrepreneurs in the early days, they think and hope that their product market fit journey is going to be a straight line to success, right? And it's going to take 1 to 6 months to get there. Maybe some of you have been there. Most of the entrepreneurs that I worked with, right, very optimistic. They come up with the idea, they get so excited, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is it. 6 months and I'm going to be rich. Well, the reality is that your path is going to look like this, right? This is where you will learn that you may need to have to do a lot of pivots, and the pivots are going to be mostly small, right? This is where you are determining you're determining how are your users using your product. You want to be able to create retention in your product and make sure that you're communicating the value of your product and features quickly enough. You want to be able to learn as quickly as possible and understand what new features and improvements to your product experience and functionality would make your product stickier, so more and more of your existing customers use your product on a regular basis and also recommend and refer new users to you. The big pivots are the most painful, the most time-consuming, and of course, the most expensive. This is where you might realize that you need to target a different customer segment or a different industry, or you may realize that you need to solve a totally different problem altogether, still within the same industry possibly, right? But a different problem. And the key here is to know that it's very, very normal. It's normal, and for all startups, make big pivots. But the key is to make those pivots as quickly as possible. Don't ignore the data, right? And what this means is that your startup becomes a series of well-designed experiments that you're constantly testing. And the smaller your experiments are, what that allows you to do is to actually make a lot of experiments, get data points, and each of the data points that you get allow you to make better decisions in the future, right? With every single step that you take, then you're actually learning data that will help inform the next decision. So your decisions are getting better. And what this allows you to do is to learn and prevent you from going in the wrong direction for too long. So even if you have to make that big giant pivot, it's not going to be as expensive, right? Because you're making those decisions a lot sooner. So in today's startup environment, you will hear everybody that speed is everything. Everyone is going to tell you that you need to execute faster, you need to move faster, fast, right? It's all about doing things faster. But it's not about building things faster, not just about building things faster, because fast is important, but it's also about decreasing the learning time cycle and reducing the cost of being wrong. So how can you increase your product velocity and reduce the cost of being wrong? And my answer is through an efficient process based on lean and agile methodologies. From my work with founders, I find that a lot of people have heard of the terminology lean and agile, but they don't actually know how to put them into action, into a process that your entire team can use and execute more efficiently to reap the benefits of lean and agile. By the way, one thing that I'm going to mention, when you work in this type of a framework, you need to be thinking of, and this is a lot easier to do in the early days, but I want you to encourage you to structure your teams in a totally different way. So most companies, they have their tech working separate from marketing, from sales and business development, right? And the whole idea behind increasing product velocity is to making sure that your teams, right, your tech is working with marketing and business development and sales so that they can understand each other and work together to be able to basically understand what needs to be built, how it needs to be built, why it needs to be built, and then the tech team is building it, they're releasing it, and then there's the QA, and then it goes into the product. And this testing process and quick iteration can only happen if you structure your teams where people can actually work together. Okay, so in the early days, it's a lot easier to do because you don't have a lot of bloat, right? You have multiple team members doing the same thing and you're constantly talking. But as your company grows, you want to be able to try to, at least that's what I do in my startups, to structure the team so that they are siloed and have all the different types of skill sets that you need to be able to understand the full circle, the full cycle of the process. Okay. And in order to be able to find product market fit and go through the iterations, you need to be able to iterate both on the product side and the market side at exactly the same time. You can't just iterate a lot on the product and ignore the market, because that means you're building a lot of things, but it may not be the things that your customers want. And if you spend too much time on your market, but not enough time on your product, right? The opposite can happen. You can understand their problems really well, but you don't have the capacity to solve their problems with a great product. So you need to be able to have both in order to find product market fit fast. Does that make sense? Awesome. So let's actually understand, I'm going to define what is a process, right? A lot of people scoff at process. They're like, we're a startup, we don't need process. But I don't want you to create so much process that it slows you down. But a process helps your team really understand what everybody needs to do, how things need to be done, and the step-by-step fashion of your process will allow you, because you know exactly what steps to execute, to move faster. So a process is a repeatable way to produce consistent results over and over and over again. And a good process is important because it will create transparency throughout all of your projects, so you can detect earlier when things are headed in the wrong direction. So now I'm going to break down the actual process that I use and teach that will allow you to learn early, learn often, and learn cheap, so you can efficiently iterate through the product development process and optimize your team so they execute like a well-oiled machine. So here you see the 10 steps in the TechSpeak process. We're going to run through them, and then I'm happy to answer questions and make sure that you guys, this is relevant for you. So step one is to validate. This is probably the most important step. And I know that based on the Founder Institute curriculum, that you guys drill that into your founders as well, which I love. So validation is where you will help, you will be able to refine all of your ideas and make sure that they are painkillers. And you're doing this for every one of your ideas, no matter how small. You'll need to identify the target customer for whom you're building it. You need to refine your ideas to make sure that they are painkillers. level 12 out of 10 problems and not just level 5, 6, or 7 problems. And a lot of people make the mistake, if they do validation at all, is to only do validation at the beginning when they come up with the idea. But what I'm saying is that every single idea for a new feature or functionality, no matter how large or small, before you build it, has to go through a validation process, because that will help you really refine and understand your understanding of the problem and understand, is it solving a painkiller problem or is it solving a level 4 or 5 problem? Is this feature or functionality worth building? And is this going to add to the overall value of your product so that your customers would be happy and willing to pay for it? Even if you have already a product in the market with paying customers, you could have 2 different customer segments that have the same exact problem, but their needs could be completely different. And therefore, how you should solve the same problem for these 2 different customer segments would be completely different. And wouldn't that be amazing for you to know this insight before you build a product? Because the more guesswork you can remove and intentionally build the product, the cheaper it is going to be for you in the long term, because you're preventing yourself from recoding later. Because eventually you learn this, right? But the sooner you realize this, if you don't build something in the first place, right, that's cheaper and faster. So that's what I'm telling you to do here. And a lot of founders always tell me, I talk to customers all the time, but if your questioning was not aligned with specific hypotheses that you want to test, then you're missing out on a lot of real nuances and gems that can really help you refine your understanding of those problems and therefore help you build the best solution to address those problems. Proper and focused customer discovery will ensure that every new feature and functionality solves a pain point and prevent you from building technology for technology's sake. Over the years, I have probably witnessed millions of lines of code that were written that were never used by people. And if you need an inspiration, check out this website. I love it. It's called startupgraveyard.io. It'll show you all the startups that failed. And this is the reason why, is because they couldn't find product market fit before they ran out of money. Validation is probably the most important step in the product development process, because it will help you refine the product by making sure that every new feature and functionality solves real pain points and, of course, prevent you from building technology for technology's sake. So step 2 is building a prototype. Here, though, it's a clickable prototype. This is where you will refine the solution. And instead of jumping into code, which, by the way, is prototyping, writing code is prototyping, but it's the most expensive way to do so. Clickable prototypes, on the other hand, are on the other side of the cost spectrum. So not only is refining solutions using clickable prototypes cheaper and faster than writing code, prototyping will also allow you to test multiple solutions before you write code. So if you want to be able to solve a problem this way or this way, before you write code, you can quickly create both prototypes and test them with your customers, understand the issues around both designs, and maybe it's A or B, or maybe it's a combination of the two, right? You can do all those kind of tests really quickly and not have to code before you learn something. Remember, it is a lot cheaper and faster to rapidly change prototypes than it is to rewrite code. And just guessing, this is what we do when we create software. We are always guessing. And guessing what solutions will resonate with your customers will always result in rewriting code and take more time. And some of the tools that you guys are most likely are familiar with are Adobe XD, Figma, Sketch, Marvel App, InVision. There's so many tools on the market that will allow you to do it. It's very important to understand that this step, even though you may use no-code tools like Bubble or other tools, which I absolutely love, you should still never skip this clickable prototyping phase, because it's still a lot easier for you to test things when it's not code. Bubble, even though it's no code, there's code written, there's logic that needs to happen in order for you to implement something. So this is a lot faster. It's counterintuitive, but trust me, it's faster. All right, so steps 3 to 7 is where you will define your MVP, which stands for minimal viable product, and you're going to plan and prepare for development. You will need to define your MVP based on your time and your cost constraints, and not just by simply reducing the number of features that you launch with from, let's say, 20 to 4. That's what most people do. So they have a product in that they decided that this is what we're going to build. Our MVP is going to be this many features less. It's not enough. It's a good start, but it's not enough. Have you ever wondered how the same project can be estimated to cost $10,000, $50,000, even $100,000 in certain cases, right? And all estimates could be completely legitimate. Think about that. Same project, 3 different costs. And that's because the details of what and how you build something matter a lot. So you can actually, on purpose, decide to implement the cheaper version of the solution to save money. And there are lots and lots of decisions that you can make that will help you control the costs of your MVPs. And the tendency for a lot of technical people is to build the perfect solution that scales to millions of users right out of the gate. So your goal here is to plan the fastest way for you to test the product and put it into the hands of your customers. And the solution may involve no technology at all. That's the best thing, right? And no technology, the cheapest, the fastest, and then there's spectrums of it. And if you're the CEO, your job is to implement this learn early, learn often, and learn cheap mindset and make it a part of your company culture and train or hire only people who are willing to work in this iterative way. Your team needs to understand how to make decisions from learn early, learn often, learn cheap perspective. And most technical people, unfortunately, are very, very uncomfortable in doing this. They want to build the perfect solution that scales to millions of users or use that shiny new technology that they want to learn and get experience in, not because it's the right thing for your business, but that's because they want to do it, right? But what you need to do is figure out what's the minimal viable thing that you can launch with as quickly as possible, and then refine, scale, and iterate from there. Remember, the faster you're launching, the faster you're going to be learning, which of course reduces the cost of being wrong and being able to do it with a small but mighty team because you are so focused, right? You're building things in a very focused way. So now you can do things and iterate really quickly and even run a lot of experiments, but you can do it with a small team. This is how you increase your product velocity by moving quickly, but also reducing your costs of being wrong by being able to learn really, really quickly. And remember, every time you learn something, the next decision that you make about your product, about your market, and everything else in your business is going to be so much more accurate because data will help you make better decisions. Okay. And steps 8 and 9 is to code and deploy. Have you ever used Agile here? If you guys, I don't know, if you use Agile project management, I don't actually know at what point, like at what stages you guys are in. But even if you use Agile project management, you want to be able to release things even more often than 2 weeks, right? The whole goal of steps 8 and 9 is to be able to create a process where you are increasing the rate at which you're releasing new product features or improved functionality. You need to be able to go from releasing every 2 weeks to 1 week to multiple times a day product releases at some point. And the faster you can get there, the faster you can, again, increase your learning capacity. Launching early and often allows you to learn and iterate faster. So here, what we're doing is optimizing our team and our process so we're not spending too much time and money going in the wrong direction. The more tighter your team and your process, the better you are executing. And finally, step 10 is where you need to set up analytics. So instead of guessing, you can use data to make product improvement decisions. This is where you will need to implement all kinds of analytics and start collecting user behavior data that will help you learn how your users use your product, what features and functionalities they use the most, what delights them, what makes them frustrated, what brings them back to using your application over and over again, and why they might not be coming back as often as you'd like. All of these new data points will help you make decisions. Which one of your existing features needs to be improved and how? What new features and functionalities would make your product stickier so more and more of your existing customers use your product on a regular basis, and also recommend and refer new users to you. Data-driven decision-making to improving your products is absolutely transformational because, again, instead of guessing what exact features to focus on to get more users, you're actually going to use data that will inform you on what next functionality that you should be testing and implementing, which of course prevents you from spending a lot of resources building the wrong things. So here in step one, we're validating your idea's riskiest assumptions with a small set of our customers. These are one-on-one conversations that you're having. So you get some data, right? And some insights, you build based on those. And then here in step 10, you're now scaling your learning with a bigger subset of your customers. And from the data that you collect, you will get ideas on how to improve your product. And these ideas are not what most people do is they see, they're like, oh my gosh, look what the data is telling me. This is such a great idea. Let's make this improvement. And then they jump into steps 8 and 9 and they do coding. But these ideas, based on what I told you, are hypotheses, right? They're assumptions that you're making. So what you're going to do is go back to step number 1, validate your assumptions, state your new hypotheses, gather data and insights and nuances around your understanding of the problem. And that's how you go through all of the steps over and over and over again until you reach product market fit. All of these steps will allow you to learn early, learn often, and learn cheap. It'll help you minimize mistakes, miscommunications, missed deadlines, and of course, minimize waste and save you time and money, which is a bonus. And by learning early and often, you will actually increase your chances of hitting success and reduce the cost of being wrong. So basically, with this process, I'm going to mention this again, is that your startup is a series of well-designed experiments that you're constantly testing so you can adjust your path to success. And this is the key. The smaller your experiments are, the faster you can test and learn whether something is going to work or not. So instead of taking this long approach to figure out whether something works or not, we're taking lots and lots of small steps to get to success faster. Another reason why I love hypothesis-driven product development process is because it forces you to understand what you're measuring, right? And metrics play a big factor in your decision-making. So with every single experiment that you run, a true hypothesis, just like in a scientific experiment, defines the success and failure. And when you define your metrics, it automatically prevents you from, or at least forces you to stop and question, am I doing the right thing? Why are we not reaching our goals? And then allow you to understand so much better what you're doing and what you need to change if necessary. Okay. And by the way, this is how much you can save in product development costs if you use this learn early, learn often, learn cheap process. That's by US rates, right? This is not by your rates, adjusted based on your situation, right? But in the US, because everything is so expensive to build, it's $124,000 for each new release. And that's one developer. And the costs go astronomical as your team size increases. And if you're interested in seeing the breakdown, you can actually go to techspeak.co, and there are free on-demand classes there. There's a webinar called How to Cut Your Product Development Costs by Up to 50%. You can go and see how I came up with these numbers. Just take my word for it for now. And techspeak.co/classes is all of these webinars are free. So go check them out. And with that, let's jump into some questions. Should I stop sharing? So we can see the full group?
Sure. So if anyone has any questions, if you all can raise your hands, I think that'll be great. And then you can unmute and ask your question. So let's see. Muley, you're clapping, no? That's not a raised hand.
Oh, sorry. No, I raised hands. I'm in wrong emoji.
Okay, so go ahead and ask your question. Wait, let me highlight you and Nelly just so everyone can see your I can't find you, sorry. Can you just go ahead? Okay, you're here.
Yeah.
It would be good if you can rename yourself with your name instead of
Yeah, sure.
generation F. I was searching for Muley.
Sorry about that. So hi Nelly, now this is really useful for me. I'm not a techie person, so I'm really struggling with this thing. So one problem I am facing is when it comes to hiring, because I'm not a techie guy. How can I choose the right talent for the project? So that's one thing I'm facing, and the other thing is when it comes to the doing the effort estimation and like now let's say now for doing for prototype we may have better and quicker technologies we can use, but not knowing them it really waste our time. So for a non-techie person, how we are going to manage these problems?
Yes, so there is a webinar there, how non-techies can launch successful tech startups. Go watch that. It's an hour webinar. I think you would highly benefit from it. But this is the issue that I face all the time. So there's two requirements that you need to have in order to manage a team as a non-technical person. The first one and the long-term one, right? It's something that you need to do for the long term, is to become technically literate. You cannot say, I'm not technical. I'm not saying you should become a developer, but you need to be able to understand the high level of all the different types of technologies and what they do. You need to understand definitions of databases, APIs, all of these things, right? So that you can start to be literate, so you can communicate. And if some technical guy, bro, who wants to take advantage of you, right, starts to tell you BS, you can catch them on it. Versus this is the biggest, the 90% of the people that I work with lost thousands of dollars because they trusted blindly the technical person that has very different priorities, right? And how they define success. So they may say, we should go with this technology because, like I said, they want to learn it, or because that's all they know. It's not necessarily the best thing. They may not want to follow this agile process, lean and agile process that I just taught you, right? So my goal when I created the TechSpeak curriculum is to teach people all of the steps that you need to take into account in a process. You need to then have your team understand that process, and you can hold each other accountable, right? And then it's about conversations. Once you have trust and both of you speak the same language, because right now it's like someone is speaking Japanese and somebody's speaking English, right? Like literally like that. And you guys can't understand each other. So there's not, first of all, you're slowing yourself down. You can't move quickly, and you guys are not on the same page. And so for you to be able to do this process, two things need to happen. You need to be technically literate. And again, the reason why I said it's a long-term game is because you need to, it's just like learning any new field. The beginning part is going to be a data dump. You learn a lot. And then because technology is moving so quickly, it's an ongoing process. You're going to be learning for the rest of your startup life, right? And beyond. So and then learning new things is going to become easier because now you're building on the vocabulary and existing knowledge base, rather than at the beginning is going to be a little bit harder. So you just have to start today. You need to kind of also maybe surround yourself with people who can guide you as well. And if you have a technical person or an advisor or a mentor, or like I would say, go take TechSpeak. It's the fastest route from A to B to be able to learn this stuff, because that's what I did. Is like, okay, there's no resources. This is all the stuff you need to learn as a base, right? And that's a fast way to learn. But that's what I would tell you to do, because that will put you in the position of power, and then you're going to be a leader, right? Are you the CEO now?
Yeah.
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 So that, like, how can a CEO run a team without really understanding the core part of your business? Technology is a core part of your business. And so what happens is a lot of the CEOs who just trust someone else to build technology for them, when you can't iterate really quickly with the product, right? Like, you're the product person and you don't understand what's happening. You're not talking to them. They're making all the decisions. And at the end of the day, you're going to have a product that doesn't actually solve customer needs, because they're not connected to the customers. They're just building features. And that's very expensive. It's the wrong approach. And that's where a lot of startups run into trouble. They spend thousands of dollars building something that shouldn't be built in the first place. So you need to play the product role, you need to get involved, and you need to learn the technical lingo so that you can then become a leader. And everybody's going to be trusting you now. And you'll be able to, funny enough, attract better technical people, right? Because you are speaking their language now. Simply when you change the way you speak, you will attract better technical people, because they want to be able to work with someone who understands. Again, I'm not telling you to become like a coder, right? But with AI, things are so changing so quickly. In the next 2 years, you may be just writing your own stuff by talking to a computer, right? Because AI is going to be writing all the code. But in the meantime, even to take advantage of those things, you still need to understand the technology. You still need to understand how to take advantage of it and how it's structured, high level. Okay. Yes. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nelly.
All right. Thanks, lovely. Thanks, Nelly, for the very detailed answer. So Rinsa has a question. Also, like, Nelly, in your presentation, when you started, there's a link, I think, to a workbook. Is it possible for you to paste that in the chat? The other links we posted, but if you could add it to the chat, that would be great.
Yes, I'm listening to you, so go ahead. Go ahead, and I'm looking away because I want to copy and paste the link, but I am listening.
Thank you, Nelly. Thank you for a wonderful session, great session within a nutshell. You delivered everything we needed as a starter. My question is regarding prototyping. The question is, how can we test it in the real market? Do you just test with the selected users? And also, how can we use a prototype in an iterative way? Say you build part of the product and a new sprint is coming, new set of requirement is coming. Are we going to maintain the prototype itself to build more prototypes, or how it is going to fit into an existing product?
Yeah, great question. So first, clickable prototypes are very, like, as I mentioned, very fluid, right? They allow you to test different solutions, be able to put your ideas down. It's a visual medium, so everybody understand what is going to be built. It's actually going to help you create estimations and technical requirements, all the steps that are required for development as well. So the way that you first initially come up with a clickable prototype idea, right? If this is, let's say you don't have a product, so you create your base for your prototype, and then you go out and you start testing it with your customers. The types of customers you're going to be, so if you start with validation, which is the first step, you're already going to have a base of customers that you've spoken with. Okay, so the first group that you're going to introduce, when you're talking to them, you would be in connection and in touch with them, and you would be continuously getting their feedback, right? And so that would be the first group of people that you bring on to test. And then you can also, once you learn from these early adopters, right, the people who already were familiar, you can also, I would require this from my students as well, is to go to new people similar to these people, right? And then you want to be able to recruit new people that can test with you. So it's always, whenever you're testing prototypes, existing people that you've already worked with and new people. The benefit for both groups, right? People already familiar with your product and what you're doing, those are your existing, there's a lot of stuff you can learn from them. And then new people have a new, fresh, new perspective. You want to be able to make sure that your product is easy to use, easy to understand. And so a lot of the things that you're testing for in the prototyping phase are usability issues, right? And so if you don't show your product or only show your product to people who are familiar with it, then you're missing out on a lot. So you're actually going to get the most benefit by showing it to new people who are not familiar with it. Okay. So that's to start with. And then for every new iteration, every new feature and functionality, you now already have a base, right? That prototype is living, breathing organism. It's your job to maintain it. So you build a new feature, you putting it in. So if it's a brand new feature, you can just build the additional screens. If it's improvements of existing features, you're just making the changes inside of the clickable prototype, and it's an ongoing document.
So it is the prototype itself should be a maintained document.
Absolutely, everything you're creating becomes an asset that people can refer to, and it's your job as a company to constantly maintain it, because otherwise it loses its usefulness, right? It's not like everything you put time into creating is going to be really, really important to maintain, because that's an asset for your company. And then when I teach in TechSpeak, part of the prototyping, right, like the next steps is you build the technical requirements with your clickable prototypes, and that defines like all the different use cases, business logic, how to use it, all the details, right? That will help you, your developers, also to estimate, because now they understand. Remember, we talked about three different ways of building, right? Or three different prices. The details that are on those prototypes and how you want to build it is going to determine, like, is this going to cost, is it going to take 2 or 3 days to do, or is it going to take 3 months to do, right? So like starting with the clickable prototypes is where you're creating those assets that developers use as well. And they will refer to them constantly when they're developing for both the UI and the functionality.
So for this to work, we should never break the process, right? So that
that's correct.
In case,
yeah, the 10 steps that I'm teaching you, they should be implemented for all the features and functionalities, no matter how small they are. Sometimes you'll be like, oh, this is such a small thing, we don't need to do clickable prototypes. And that's the tendency where if you break the rule one time, human beings, right? They will keep, this is so small, we don't need to do it this time around, right? But it will come back to you and bite you in the that's why I say do all the steps all the time. The only step you might skip is the design step, because once you have the initial base of design, you can reuse elements, right? So unless it's a brand new functionality, oftentimes you can create screens from existing prototypes, right? So you don't necessarily need a brand new design for every single time. That's the only exception to the rule.
Thanks, sir.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
All right, thanks a lot, Rinsa and also Nelly. Okay, so Rajesh has a question. Rajesh, can you switch your video on, or it's not possible for you?
It's difficult for me. Hi, Nelly.
Okay, so then just ask your question. No worries.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is how we can automate the product development with the sales funnel, our sales business product sale.
How can we connect the product with the sales team? Is that what the question is?
Yeah, the question is like, how can we automate the product development along with the sales funnel?
Can you give me an example so I can understand the question better?
Suppose we are developing like some products related to purpose ticketing, and there are like 30 to 40 customers in the pipeline running. And we're developing the product and we are doing the sales. Then how we can automate both things together?
Okay, so that's step number 10 of the TechSpeak process that we just talked about. So you need to be able to integrate analytics and tools once into your product, once it's built, right? This is where you, depending on what it is that you need to track, and sales funnels and user behavior data so that you can understand how they're using your product when they're in there, right? To help you inform on how to improve it. All of that is going to be done after the product is launched, but you need to plan it ahead of time, right? You need to say, oh, we need to integrate with this tool to be able to collect this data, or to be able to do this like funnel analytics or whatever else, right? So you need to plan it during development, because that will also take development time. Make sure, like, these are all the scope creep that a lot of people face when they're building. They don't consider, oh, analytics is something we need, but they forgot about it. Right. And so all of a sudden you need to launch, and then you realize that you haven't thought about analytics and what you need to track. And now your project is going to be late because you totally forgot about it. But analytics needs to be planned during the time when you are building, and so that by the time you launch, you will already have everything that you need to be able to track your users and track what they're doing, and actually be much more intentional about the usage and the improvements inside the product. I don't know if I answered your question. This is how I understood it. So if I didn't answer your question, please repeat it and tell me so.
Okay, so I think Twaraka has also asked the question. So as a founder, I've set up some business activities, and I try to move with my goals, plans, and future focus. But the daily activities in the workplace make my process very slow. I have staff, but I have to be involved in every activity. Sometimes I have to finish every work. How can I manage these daily activities problems or make them faster? Does it depend on the human resources or me? So that's the question she has asked. So I think it's just managing her time, the team's time, and I think maybe a little bit of what. So Rajesh also has this problem. He has a very small team. Part of that question might have involved is how can I automate product development so he can save time. So I think that might be also relevant to maybe a little bit of what Twaraka is asking as well, right? So she's asking, like, is it like, does it depend on human resources or her? Like, yeah, so that's the question.
So it depends.
Let me send it to you. She has, I think, messaged me. I'll send the question to you directly.
Okay. So anytime you do something inside your business, and the reason why you ask this question, it's very important also to understand how big is your team, right? Because if your team is just you and your co-founder, then you're splitting all of the tasks between you. That's HR and marketing and sales and product development and everything, right? So all of you, the two of you, are doing everything. Now, when you're starting to become so busy that you actually can't work on and do meaningful work and progressing your startup, that's a problem, right? So maybe that's your first sign that you need to either improve your process, but it sounds like you don't have the right team members in place who can execute some of the things, right? So those are the two things that could be that you need to play with. Is it that your process is inefficient and you're just toiling and working on the wrong things, right? That's the first possibility. Or maybe your team needs another person to take some of the work from you that is meaningless, and you can outsource that, especially if you're working on things like accounting and not product or sales related, right? Like those are the most important things in a startup in the early days. So if you're wasting your efforts every day working on things that don't make either the product or the startup better, then especially if you're doing administrative work, I would outsource that to someone who is really good at that and can probably free up 50% of your day, because admin tasks they're boring, right? And they take a lot of time, and you're probably doing them a lot slower than the professional because you're not familiar with it. So I think in order to answer this question, I need to understand more of the circumstance. But those are kind of things that I think about whenever people ask me those types of questions on optimization and productivity. You need to look at so many different things and decide how to solve that problem efficiently.
All right, thanks a lot, Nelly. Okay, so it's 8:27. So I think you guys did a great job of asking questions this time. So last question is from Deepa. Go ahead.
Hi, Nelly. So you talked about agile project management, right? So what do you exactly mean by that, and how do I make my team like more productive? Like, how can I see what they're doing, you know?
Yeah.
Right now they're just reporting on like Excel sheet and whatever. Like, what can I do to make it more better?
Yeah. So you mentioned, and a lot of people do this. They say, I want to be able to see transparency, and they mention something like Excel. We're doing things in Excel.
Yeah.
Or is there a better tool for me to do this? And maybe sometimes the answer is yes, we need a better tool. And it could be as simple as Trello, there's ClickUp, there's Jira. They all do about the same thing. The most important thing to understand when it comes to process is having a good process. Because I know so many people who do great project management in Excel because they already know exactly who's working on what needs to be tracked, what we need to do to become, to make sure that the knowledge is surfaced when it's needed. All of those things, it's not about the tool. If you're asking that question, most likely it's because you don't have a process for actually managing the team, right? The team doesn't know what to do, how to report to you, in what order, like all of these things. So you have a lot of inefficiency in that area. And most likely by getting a tool is not going to fix the transparency issue. That's my guess, right? I could be completely wrong.
Yeah.
But based on my experience, that's not the case.
So what do you think would be a good process?
So that's I teach that inside of TechSpeak. It's a long thing, right? Like it's not, and it is actually connected to the steps that you did. So you notice steps 8 and 9, right, is where you're managing the coding process. But the steps before that came before that actually set that process step for success. If you just focus and say, well, I just need to do project management better and don't do all the other things correctly, you're still not having a good process. Process is from beginning to end. What do you do at every single point to get to the point that by the time you do product management, you literally have every piece of information that you need, everything's defined, everything is estimated. You have all of the team members, the right team members assigned to the right tasks, priorities already set, right? All of the things that we need to be able to do to get to this point from steps 1 to 7 are very important to your project management process. Okay. And then you set up a tool that you, depending on if you have 2-week cycles, right? Your process is going to be different than if you have 1-week cycles versus you have iterative development. The true agile, in my mind, is releasing whenever something is ready, right? A lot of people are not ready for that, right? And it depends on what it is that you want to do. You adopt a different process based on your team's ability to understand how to work in that process. And maybe a lot of my students, for example, they start with 2 weeks. Like if they've never done agile, they start with 2 weeks because it's the easiest one to manage if you've never managed it before. And then you can say, well, we're going to optimize this and then go to 1 week. Then we're going to optimize this and then we're going to switch to multiple times a day if you want, right? Or once a day or whatever it is. So that's the process that I'm talking about, right? That's process, not tools. Some of the tools I already mentioned, Jira, for example, or Monday.com, ClickUp, sorry. ClickUp. There's so many project management tools. And when you look at them, they're pretty much the same. Some of them has this bells and whistles, another one has, but at 95% at the core, they do the same thing. So it doesn't matter really which tool you use. it's very important to understand what's the process you're going to make sure that by the time they get to that step, they have everything they need, everything was estimated correctly, and then you can not just have transparency, you actually will ensure that you're releasing on time and on budget and all of these other things.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay, so I think we're gonna wrap up because it's past 8:30, and I think I told Nelly that most likely we'll finish around 8:15. So Nelly, thank you so much for doing such a great session for us. I think the founders learned a lot. Like it's for me, like, you know, I've seen a lot of people do product development, but I think the way you explain it is there's something very unique, and it's logical, and it makes a lot of sense, and I think very easy to understand. So thank you so much for coming and doing the session for us, and we definitely love to have you back again whenever you have time. So I'll probably have a chat with you later about maybe how we can work together more. So thank you so much, and I think we'll move to the next part of our program segment. So you're welcome to hang around if you want to, but it's probably not a good use of your time.
Nope,
Right?
I'm gonna head out. Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully it was beneficial. Take some of the stuff I taught you and actually do them, right? It's not enough to listen. You have to take one or two things, and actually start doing it, right? Write down one or two things right now if you want, but I want you to take some of the action on it. Not necessarily all. It's going to be great if you do all of it, right? But at least one or two things, right? All right. Thank you, guys. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you so much for coming by.
Bye-bye.
All right.